Hello and welcome to the programme. Well, it's too close to call in Israel. Exit polls show incumbent Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in a dead heat with his main political rival, former military chief Benny Gantz. Well, the election has been billed as a referendum on Mr Netanyahu, who is fighting for his political survival while facing corruption charges. Well, major exit polls have Benny Gantz's blue and white opposition barely ahead or virtually tied with Netanyahu's Likud party. It's a result that mirrors April's election outcome, which saw the two parties winning an identical number of seats. Well, NBC News chief global correspondent Bill Neely reports from the Likud party headquarters in Tel Aviv.
Yes, hi Isabel. Israel's second election in 5 months appears to be just as close as the first one. The exit polls conducted by 3 of Israel's television networks appear to show a dead heat between Israel's longest-serving Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, who's been at the helm actually for a fifth of Israel's entire modern history, between him and Benny Gantz, his main opponent, a man he used to order as Israel's chief of the defense staff. So it looks like a dead heat in 2 ways. A dead heat between the parties that the 2 men lead, and also between the coalitions that they might build. So it appears to be too close to call, and certainly neither man has an immediate path to victory. Now, one interesting thing is the strength of one of the smaller parties, led by one of Israel's former foreign and defense ministers, Avigdor Lieberman. He has possibly 8, possibly 10 seats in Israel's 120-seat parliament. That makes him a bit of a kingmaker in a way. And he has been, in fact, he's the reason why this election is taking place at all, because he did not want to join Benjamin Netanyahu's government last time. Remember, in April, only 15,000 votes separated the 2 men, Netanyahu and Benny Gantz. They were level on seats, and Netanyahu was 1 seat short of an absolute majority, and Avigdor Lieberman wouldn't give him that pleasure of giving him his support. So Lieberman looks like, at the moment, possibly being the kingmaker, but it's all up in the end to Israel's president. He is the one who will decide whether to call Benjamin Netanyahu to try to form a government again, which of course he failed to do after April's election, or he will call for the first time on Benny Gantz to try to form a government. He has said publicly that he does not want the Israeli electorate to go through a third election, but this is all for the future, and I have to stress these are just exit polls. The actual counting of the votes begins now, and it could be days, it could even be weeks before we know who will lead Israel's government in the future. Isabel, back to you.
As we continue to wait for more election results to come in, well, let's cross to Ishan Tharoor. He is a foreign affairs reporter for The Washington Post, and he joins us from the US Capitol. Well, thanks so much for joining us on the programme. Well, we're just hearing there from Bill Neely that this is a dead heat. Give us your take on how this might all turn out.
Well, as your colleague said, it mirrors what happened in April. At that time, and when the exit polls came out in April, we saw a similar configuration of seats. As we are seeing right now, though, the main difference this time is the position of Avigdor Lieberman and his block of seats. Lieberman, as you may know, is a right-wing nationalist. He used to be a minister in Netanyahu's cabinet, but he is profoundly secular and will not sit with other right-wing religious parties. So this really dents Netanyahu's ability to form a right-wing coalition in power, and perhaps tips the scales in favor of perhaps more centrist, secular configuration. The other catch this time is we may see, as your colleague said, other parties recommend the president to let Benny Gantz have a first shot at forming a government. We've seen the Arab leader, Ayman Odeh, suggest that he'd possibly be up for making that recommendation. That's a pretty significant statement because, by and large, the Arab parties do not join coalitions in the Israeli Knesset.
Okay, well, this is very interesting because it also does play into the charges that the incumbent President Netanyahu is facing. So if the balance of power does seem to go in favour of Benny Gantz, where does that leave Netanyahu?
It puts him in a pretty precarious situation. He needs to remain in power in order to help push through legislation that would effectively give him immunity from these ongoing corruption investigations and the allegations against him. If he's not in power, that won't happen. And you could see a trial. You could see a situation where Israel's longest-serving prime minister is sentenced. So it's incredibly high stakes for him, not just for his political career, but for his future life thereafter.